Exactly. Right, well, I'll get on to Paddy Power, see we'll send a pair of lucky pants to the Laois team, substitutes, management, and everyone who showed up to a Moore Park yesterday, including you and me, Cheddar. Everyone in the audience. That's the kind of mood we're all in after this win.
The GAA Hour with Colm Parkinson is brought to you by Paddy Power, home of the money back special.
And when I started running, I suppose I didn't stop, and when I got the chance to go, I said I should go, and so I opened up.
We were only the small little fish out there, so we are, and we're trying hard to make it through, but it's hard to get the breaks when you're the smaller fish.
Because I love this county so much, and it's just, I'm delighted the lads did it for the people of Waterford today, because like I'm heartbroken.
So that was Jack Nolan for Midlands Radio, Cheddar. So he was capturing the mood of the moment there just as the final whistle blew. A little bit of lovely Laois as well. Cheddar, if we can't sing from the rooftops about a win like this, when can we actually start being a little bit celebratory about our county?
Well, no better man than Jack to capture the mood, is all I'll say. And look, I suppose it's great that Jack can capture that mood, because he's contributed a lot himself to hurling in the county at underage level and at development level over a number of years in that as well. So I'd say, look, a lot of these people, we'll just talk about the emotions first before we talk about the analytics and that. Look, an awful lot of these people showed their emotion, and a lot of that was very personal, built up over a long number of years in a sports context first, about being close a number of times, not that often. I don't want to over egg this either, but there's a number of times you can go back to the kind of Shea Gold and Croker and different times like that Laois were very, very close in a situation like that. And I suppose the last 3 or 4 minutes people are on the edge of their seats. I certainly remember Sean Moran scoring the penalty in Parnell Park and that.
My God, yeah, and against the Piercing with Coola.
And correct, yes.
And he robbed a mountain of ground, because where Lennon fouled him, it was nowhere near where he took the free.
Yeah, no, I thought that all right, and I thought that the umpire should have taken that back. And would you believe it, I'm just thinking now, well, we were in the opposite situation against Galway, I think in 2014, and we had a free almost in the very same place. Noel Riley came up to take it, and we needed, I think we were a point or two down, needing to knock Galway out of the Leinster Championship. I think it was the Leinster semi-final. Actually, I think it was the Leinster semi-final, if my memory serves me correct. And Owen went up to take it was a free like that. It wasn't a penalty, it was a free like that, and we didn't convert it. If we would have won the match. I think the game was blew up nearly on the puck out. So a lot of Laois people remember that. And look, this is the beauty about sport. All of these little pictures flash in front of your eyes just as these events occur, and they're very, very emotional. I mean, an awful lot of people give a huge, even outside of the players, and most of the people that were in Moore Park yesterday are coaches or parents of kids, driving kids all over the county to games and that, and they have the very same emotions as I would, Woolley, or as you would have, or as Tommy Fitzgerald had yesterday. And it was real edge of the seat stuff. They had fought like lions right throughout the game, dominated the game really, and then found that they could have been unhinged with a free in the last minute. So it was real edge of the seat stuff. So I'm not surprised that there was such an outpouring of emotion from all these people at the end of the game. And look, it was brilliant to see. It's just absolutely fantastic to see.
Yeah, and they all gathered around the top end of the field there, and the supporters gathered around them, and they were singing songs. Look, for me, it was
there's a lot of other things as well that there's a lot of personal emotions in something like that as well. And I don't want to just get too serious on it, but you've got to think about real serious issues in the mix and that as well. When you think of Ryan Mullaney's performance yesterday, lost his sister-in-law 4 or 5 weeks ago. He definitely was going to give performance yesterday. Conor Keeney wasn't going to bully him yesterday. So there's a lot of things like that. There's a picture at the end of our Thursday end of the Sunday game last night of Martin Cuddy. She just showed the emotion, I suppose, of what it meant to be a Laois supporter. And Martin lost his son a number of weeks back as well. So there's a lot of personal things in a situation like that that's wrapped up in a win like that. And I'm not saying for a minute that they replace what you have lost, but maybe they might help in some way.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of other issues as well. You have a number of those players, including in other counties. This is not just necessarily Laois, but just that Laois is in the spotlight. I'm talking about him now. That would have went through some serious injuries, ACLs. I'm thinking of Ben Conroy, who would have been playing yesterday only for an ACL. I'm thinking of Cahir Healy, who I'd love to see back playing again next year, who's out with a double ACL. But I'm also thinking of the likes of Willie Dunphy. I managed Willie for a number of years, and I was amazed to see him out in the middle of the field tearing around and tearing into lads yesterday. I think Willie Dunphy's probably playing with no ligaments in his knee at this stage. It's that serious. No, I'm it might be funny, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
It's very serious because it's going to be very serious for him in a couple of years' time.
And he got buried under the terrace just before half time.
Well, I
He
tell
looked
you
he
the
was in
truth,
big trouble.
Willie, he buried everybody else as well. Himself and Char were like wrecking balls going around the place, and Dublin didn't have that stomach for the fight, I thought. And I just want to go back to that point, and just before we go off the emotional point, I suppose, there's in a situation like that for players, and everybody knows that, like, these are all neighbours and friends of all of us, and we all know what they go through in that. And when you get a win like that, it's some small reward, and for what they've given and that. So I think a lot of people in Laois knew that yesterday, what the team had went through and that, and we're just so glad for the players, really, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely. And it's the best Laois win I've seen since 1992, when the footballers beat Meath in Navan, and Meath had just been beaten in the All-Ireland final. Now, there was some good wins for the footballers in between, but I was involved. And never, you don't have that kind of stress on the terrace and just watching it and your heart is in your mouth, because I thought when Dublin got it back to on 55 minutes, I thought they'd push on, and then Laois got 3 in a row and they were able to push it out. The crowd really got behind them. It was just that type of game where the players just played with a huge amount of heart and, got the crowd behind them, got the crowd emotionally invested in it. And when the full-time whistle went, the natural thing to do was just to run onto the field. I didn't know why I did it. I just wanted to get out onto the field and be out on it. I don't know how to explain it.
You're right. It certainly does remind me. I was in Navan in 92, and I agree with you. That was Hughie Emerson's tour de force. There was always a great feeling after that. And look, we know why that is. This is the tribal nature and I suppose the community nature of the GAA. You're playing for your pride of your county, for your neighbours and your friends, and obviously your family, and obviously for yourself. And that wiring up is what gives it the emotion that the GAA has. That's probably not in some other sports. I'm not interested in comparing things here. So when you win something like that in a tight match, and particularly in a tight match where you were the underdogs and you had to fight really, really hard and physically fight and show that to supporters, of course you're going to connect with supporters, and those things are really, really important. But it goes back, I suppose, Wooly, it just goes back to a point that I've been making a number of times all the morning, really. We just don't want sporadic days like that. We want to celebrate them and recognise them and applaud our players and thank them for their effort. But we want to move on to a different plateau. And, it just, I suppose, put in the context for Laois supporters yesterday what it would be like to be supporting Kilkenny, Cork and Tipperary and these counties that are regularly at this level and are regularly seeing those type of performances. And we cry out for that consistency and a team to support like we had yesterday. Yeah, well, 21 of the panel are under 25, 10 are between 19 and 22. And as we said on the show, next year's Laois minor team is our best in a long time. So maybe the future does look a little bit brighter for Laois hurling. Look, I'd be very wary about that, Wooly. When I speak about those things, I suppose I'm generalising. I think there's two things here. There's the immediacy, and that's really for the team. And the immediacy really is next Sunday. And I suppose the emotional stuff needs to be parked quickly this week. Somebody said, I think some support psychologist said somewhere, emotion gets in the way of winning, and that's very, very true. So I think I'd love to see. It was just fantastic to see yesterday, and you've got to recognise that and applaud that and celebrate it in the right way, and then get your feet planted firmly on the ground again and be ready for the next week. And if I was to use some symbolism, I think, I've used myself sometimes in the past, that Jim Telfer video about the Lions and that, Laois have climbed some hills, have climbed some mountains, and they're going to face an Everest next Saturday. But the processes and the mindset and that got them over the line yesterday is the very same that's needed next week. Let's not lose that, and let's celebrate at the right time about things, and then plant the feet firmly on the ground and be ready for the fight again next week. And I've no doubt that management and team will be like that. Yeah, where would you rank it in the big shocks in the hurling world? I'm thinking of Antrim beating Offaly in 1989. Would it be up around those kind of wins? No, it is. Oh, without a doubt it is. Look, I suppose. Well, first of all, we'll talk maybe about analytically about the game in a minute, but let's just stay up in the helicopter for a minute. I said last week and in the last couple of weeks, I just think there's a great pathway for Dublin to get to an All-Ireland final. They were going to take on Laois, who most people, if we're being really honest and really frank with each other here, most people would have expected Dublin to win the game. Then they were playing Tipperary, who they wouldn't have feared, and they already beat him in the league and so on. And then they were right in the mix for a semi and pushing on to an All-Ireland. And to be beaten, I think, is a huge knockback to Dublin, and not necessarily to their team. But, we've spoke at length here about their development plans and all of this stuff that's been spent on Dublin. But being beaten like that it's a big setback, I think, in a number of ways. The football is dominant in Dublin. We know that. But if your flagship team gets beaten in a game like that, supporters drift away. Young players will gravitate towards the football because that's where the gravy train is, and so on, so on. So I think in shocks, you asked the question, Willie, and I want to go back to that. It is a serious shock. Considering even what we've said in terms of the development plan in Dublin since 2003, and then a result like this. They are serious hits to take, and you would have thought that Dublin were on a serious upper curve, having beaten Galway, a serious intent about getting into an All-Ireland. And you would have said prior to that Laois's goals were, win the Joe McDonagh, get into the Leinster Championship next year, and consolidate and build maybe a year or two as you go along, because you're right, they are a very, very young team. So it is a serious setback. You're going back to Offaly being beaten by Antrim a number of years ago, and that as well. And I'd probably go back to even 85. Laois beat Wexford in Croker in 85 in the semi-final and went into a Leinster final. It's certainly one of the best performances. I'd put it ahead, Willie, of Laois beat Offaly in the Leinster quarter-final in 14 or whatever it is, and I'd probably think that the current Dublin team, on paper and on potential, are on an upward curve, and serious, it should have been serious All-Ireland contenders, and to beat them and to take them down is a bigger statement. So obviously I'm more interested in so what happens next, and really I suppose looking at what happens next long term. And Willie, I'm on record as appealing to the GAA, and I did so again yesterday, and got a bit carried away maybe a little bit in the emotion of the whole thing, but I meant what I said. But look, there is a responsibility now on Laois County Board GAA to look at this as well. If you've got to ask, how can we sustain what we saw in Moore Park yesterday? And you're not going to win every game. It's very, very competitive. Hurling is hugely competitive. But how can Laois become competitive at that level to be able to play like that yesterday? And look, Laois County Board itself needs to look at this as well. And it needs to look at, is our development plan in Laois, disregard all of what Croke Park and Leinster Council and everybody else can do for us internally itself, is it at the cutting edge of development plans, even within Ireland, even with outside looking at other sports or looking outside of Ireland? And you look, if you read Chrissy O'Connor's article on what Cork are doing, and in terms of way they have transformed themselves to be much better than they are, or if you look at Limerick raising the treaty, clearly we aren't. I actually think that the last development plan in Laois was a year or two ago. I think the key transformational aspect of it was that they'd split the Portlaoise club in two. It's my own club, and maybe I'm a little bit emotionally attached to that, but Hurling in Portlaoise is on its hind legs, and this is what we wanted to do. So I think build on yesterday is the real message that I'd like to go forward out of this before you actually discuss the game and why it went the way it did. And look, I think that's a real key message. When you have a small little bit of success, and at the end of the day, this is just, this is one of Joe McDonagh and beating a top tier team. That's the real time to examine everything you do, and is it fit for purpose for us to drive to where we want to go to? And I'd suggest at the minute that it isn't, and maybe we should stop bleating ourselves and get our own house in order first before we start appealing to other organisations.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Shout out to Ryan O'Dwyer, Cheddar. Do you remember Ryan O'Dwyer made that mad prediction that I said last May, and you told me, that would be the Niall Corcoran connection then after that we're talking about. So Ryan O'Dwyer on the RT website did his predictions, and at the end there was one for surprise packages, and Ryan predicted Laois will win the Joe McDonagh Cup and possibly win the qualifier game to progress to the All-Ireland quarter-final. So Ryan O'Dwyer, I've tried to get him as a pundit on this show, Cheddar. I want him even more now.
I know Rhino, and he'd be definitely one you'd want to get on as a pundit, Willie. And look, Rhino knows he's hurling He's probably, he knows what Niall knows as well. Look, there's sort of some variables that's hard to put your finger on. I think Niall in his own right is very recognised as a top class coach, is fully integrated into the Laois project, and is hugely important to the current team. But his knowledge yesterday maybe of Dublin was helpful as well. Certainly the team setups and the matchups.
Yeah, we'll talk about them definitely in part 2. No, he definitely did. The only other person who, not the only other person, but another person who predicted a Laois win was you on Thursday. So we'll have a listen to that.
I was very disappointed though, Wooly. I thought we'd win before. We only won by 2. I must say that to the lads. I'm a bit disappointed with you lads. I was going for 4 there.
Having said all that, Laois ain't going to be beaten is the exact quote that you made. So listen, we'll have to give you credit on that one, Cheddar, even though you do tip Laois in every game they play. So you're going to be right at some stage. Come here, listen, we're going to have to leave it there, Cheddar, because Eddie Brennan is just after joining us on the line. How's the head, Eddie?
All good, yeah. It's a bit tender, all right, Wooly, but a good tender, to be honest. I suppose you're just, it's unbelievable to get up this morning even, and you're looking at the covers, and it was in my head yesterday evening. It's like, it's just such a big story because it's the cover of every paper. And I picked up the Times earlier on, and a picture of our man mountain, Ryan Mullaney, and just his back, number 6 on his back, and I suppose fist up in the air. And for me, that was the most satisfying thing yesterday, was just seeing the good it done for the players, and just they were just. And they've grown so much in the last few weeks, and you just go, God, if ever there's a time when you say the penny is dropping and the sky is the limit, well, there it is for them,
Yeah, it was absolutely unbelievable. It was unbelievable scenes at the full-time whistle. Obviously, the suspense of Sean Moran's free that he totally robbed yardage to bring it in a bit, because where he was fouled, I was like, that's a brilliant foul. And the next minute he's lining up for this free, he says, how the hell has he brought it in there?
Yeah, and the funny thing was, what I was, even the players, to be fair to them, we always talk about concentration right to the end. The players were hounding the ref over that, and he just ignored it, which was disappointing, to be honest, because you're kind of going, there's that side of it. It was within 10, 12 yards of the sideline, and he ends up having a straight shot on the goal, and amidst all the protest, they just ignored it. But look, in fairness to the boys, they dealt with it, and I just think I felt it was going to take something absolutely incredible to convert it from there.
Yeah, the atmosphere was unbelievable. You probably wouldn't have been in the Moore Park as much as me, but it's very rare that the stand and the terrace are packed like that for Laois matches. So and for them to witness a result like that, you even experienced the Laois awful or brilliant, awful or brilliant chant, whichever way you want to look at it. But that's only pulled out when the fans are really emotionally involved. You know what I mean? Trying to get behind them.
Yeah, and I suppose during the week, Tommy Fitzgerald spoke Friday night, and he just referenced that. He said, "Look, lads," he said, "just he said if we come in at half time, and he said we have something to drive us forward. He said the crowd will carry you off that pitch," and he said it in a half time, so it was unbelievable. And I suppose, I was there. I witnessed Moore Park, and again, look, it wasn't a Laois crowd that was involved. There was a massive crowd up there for the time that Dublin took out Kilkenny in the Leinster Championship a few years ago, and a packed house in Moore Park is a savage atmosphere. And even from yesterday, and we said that to the players, to be ready for that and to enjoy it. Don't let the atmosphere get you that you just go with it. And I think it helps us. And I felt at the start of that match that we needed some kind of a spark to really get things going. And the goal was probably that. It just really breathed adrenaline into the boys, because you'd say that coming down the stretch, the legs were going to be a factor, and we were so conscious of that, saying, look, we need subs, and they have to have a bit of a punch in them. But strangely enough, when we kind of considered the subs, we're kind of going, but boys are doing okay. So in some ways, you don't want to turn it up. But look, just an unbelievable atmosphere, and for a group of young men to experience that, it's brilliant.
It was brilliant. It just get carried away with a pitch invasion, and then the songs on the field afterwards. It's not often. My missus is from Spain, and she ran out into the field afterwards. It was just you just kind of get carried away by a match like that. that. It was a famous win and it's fantastic. But like, I mean, Dublin got it back level on 55 minutes and they were talking about the legs. I was very concerned then, you know, with the turnaround and with all those kind of things. And Jesus, the response to that, like reeled off 3 great points in a row to push it out, and that broke Dublin's hearts.
Yeah, it did. And I suppose the one thing we never let them do was we never let them lead. And, you know, I suppose during the year, and I spoke about this yesterday, was that, you know, despite maybe some of the beatings that we got during the league, we'll say off Galway and Waterford, I just, you know, at half time in those dressing rooms, you know, your message is, look, lads, I don't care what's going on. We just stick at it and we try making inroads into it, and we try, you know, we stick to the process, we stick to what we're good at. And yesterday was just, to me, further endorsement of that, because the players went out yesterday and just delivered an unbelievable performance. And, you know, I said that they just refused to just wilt yesterday, just an absolute stubbornness in them to just not give in. And despite the fact that, you know, they ate up our 5-point leads, you know, quickly enough after half time, and we were kind of concerned at that stage, but it was always the response. And I said that to the lads, it's always about what you do next. It's what happens next and how you respond to something, because the easiest thing in the world is to quit and just stay calm and just get the next ball. And they were brilliant in that regard. And the most crucial thing for me was they played for each other yesterday. The man in the better position always got the ball. You know, there was a little bit of wayward shooting, but at the same time, every time when we worked the ball well, we just always had a man. And, you know, just we were a millimetre away from a good touch at the end of that match. We'd had a walk-in goal right at the death. But look, we won't worry about that now.
That's it. You were saying after the game, their skill cannot be questioned. Today, on top of that, I saw their spirit grow, something that's been happening all year. And Cheddar's talked on the show here about, you know, some of the Joe McDonagh Cup teams, confidence being the issue. You know, that skill, it can be an issue, but it's not as much as what everybody else is saying. So, like, I mean, Laois believe that they can beat the top teams now, which I'd say they didn't, considering, you know, the awful year they had last year when you took over first. Yeah, well, and even this year, look, it's funny, like at times, you know, you're kind of looking at getting meaningful challenge matches. You know, we played Cork in a challenge match. We played Tips A team in a challenge match. We played Clare in a challenge match. So you're kind of going, okay, we have to play the top teams, lads, if we're going to improve. And that's, look, you're saying, yeah, we know the teams we're playing against, but if we play better teams and we're forced into, you know, fighting for our lives and surviving in those matches and trying to punch holes in the opposition, I said, then we'll be ready for what comes at us in the McDonagh. And that to me was an important thing this year. And you're mindful of that because, okay, we didn't play probably their strongest teams at times, but still we were playing top tier teams, and that's important for the lads to kind of see that, yeah, we're well able to survive at this level. And like you said, their confidence is a big thing, like with players and for anyone playing sport. Like it's you know, it's something that you can't just buy. It's something you can't just flick a switch, and it comes from maybe, you know, believing in something you're doing. And yes, it was just brilliant because I just saw a bunch of guys that didn't let the emotion of the occasion get to the meter, you know, because there was a huge atmosphere there yesterday, and they kept their emotions in check even when the match might have been looked as if, okay, Dublin are turning the screw now and it's going to, that narrative is going to flow. To be fair to them, they just refused to lie down, and like you said there, we worked 3 brilliant points to respond. Yeah, no, exactly. And the use of the ball is really good, Eddie. I know it's obviously something you must have been working at. Like, it's real modern hurling. Like, there's no big long clearances to nobody. Use the hand pass brilliantly. And I suppose when you have a sweeper like Lennon there, he's always there available. So, like, you know that hand pass up over a lad's head, kind of maybe batten the hand pass down. Like, I mean, you use that really well. And I was noticing in the warm up, you do it's a drill you see with football an awful lot, which is a hand passing game in a tight confined space. But you were using the hand pass, like a hand passing game in hurling in that tight confined space. Maybe that's a common warm up in hurling, but I hadn't seen it before. Yeah, no, it's just again something that I suppose Niall and Tommy kind of with the warm up, you know, we sat down and what the warm up was going to look like, and again my input from my background would be loads of touch, loads of ball, like and stuff that, you know, everything that they do in training should replicate what they're going to do on the pitch, and that's the reality of it. So I suppose it's getting the boys that look, there is nerves, there is a kind of that comes with it,
And the more often you get your hands on the ball, the more relaxed it helps you feel, because when you get on the pitch, it's like anything, that first ball, once you get it and it works for you, then you're off and you're possibly going to have a flyer of a game. So that was an important thing. And look, the lads, we've that's been the very, very simple message that we've been pushing with the lads is, don't just throw away the ball, don't get rid of it. And even yesterday, you'd say, when we were under pressure and Dublin were coming at us hard, Enda went to Lee clear in the cornerback position with a puck out, and Lee, rather than just turn around and sculling it, he carried it out, he won a free, and then Enda came up and nailed the free. So, and that's just saying, look, we're under pressure. Everyone is probably going to get it up to the other end of the pitch and leave it up there. But more than ever, you're saying to the lads, no, lads, believe in what you're doing and back yourselves.
Yeah, no, they definitely did. Come here, I know you don't want any credit, you'll probably bat this away, but your tactics were spot on, playing the sweeper, putting in a lines on Mark Crummy, who hadn't been picked to play. Crummy wasn't in it in the air at all. Leaving lots of space in front of Ross King, although he had a really big battle against Paddy Smith, and obviously starting Cha in midfield then, who did really well, and then Willie Dunphy, which was inspired stuff, bringing him to midfield, who was outstanding, and then even Sutcliffe started coming into it in the second half. You made a change there when it was needed. Everything probably worked out well on the sideline as well from a management point of view.
Yeah, look, we were. That was the big thing for us, was we were very much spotting, keeping tabs on fatigue. But no, as regards our matchups, look, I think we focused on certain things. We focused on strong players for Dublin, then, who are the guys that have influence, and we detailed all our backs. We're given guys to mark, and we said, look, wherever they go, just stick with them. And look, I'd be very honest about it. I'm not, at times, and I've said it a few times about, playing that 7th defender, sweep, or extra man, whatever you want to call it. And I haven't, I suppose, given out about it per se, but you cut your cloth to what fits. And we just felt yesterday our strategy was that we weren't going to cough up Dublin space. We weren't going to cough up an early goal. And we just said to the lads, we're going to keep it really, really tight. And I'm sure the players questioned it, because it was the first time all year that we actually really went specifically with that kind of a setup. And, we gave John the specific instructions of, don't try to be everywhere. Just sometimes mark space. They want to put the ball in space, so you just occupy that space, and the boys will be touch tight then. And look, the big thing was they were communicating together and they were talking to each other, and that's the most important thing when you're on the field. You said you have to be talking yourself through it, you have to be talking each other around the pitch. And in that regard, look, some days you try things, some days they don't work. But look, to be fair, we sat down and we hatched the plan, and look, it worked out, it was executed, and then you have to be able to, I suppose the big thing is, keep your emotions in check and say, right, where do we need a bit of fresh legs now? And we finished that match with 3 subs along our half back line, which was, a massive thing. If you had to have said that to me at the start of the day, and the half back line is such an important line, that you turn around and you have 3 new guys in there, two of them 22.
Yeah. Geez, and the age profile is so young, and a brilliant minor team next year, which, was maybe a year too soon against Wexford this year. So there definitely looks to be a good future. Come here, I want to ask you about managing the Joe McDonagh Cup win, because that was a really difficult one, because the easy thing to do would be say, lads, go home, let's not have a few pints, we have a difficult game. And that's the culture now, is to say that having a few pints is evil. And it just goes to show how much of the game is actually psychological, in that you were able to go for a few pints Sunday night, had a few on Monday and watched the match. It wasn't a late one, but physically you were up to it, 5-6 days later. But the confidence, the momentum, the camaraderie, all the good things that came with celebrating that win came to the fore,
Yeah, that was it. And even kind of, you're conscious of that, but the one thing I wasn't going to do with this week, and I said, no, I'm not going to be, the one that pulled up the handbrake on the Monday. And we were kind of going, the backdrop of it is, I wanted them to go out and do themselves justice this weekend. I said, look, one thing we're not going to do is go through the motions. And I think the players could have been forgiven for saying, look, we want to enjoy this, because what seldom really is wonderful. And for them, I left it over to them on Monday, and I said, look, whatever we do, lads, you go together, go watch the match. And Sully, the video man looked after. He got a laptop into somewhere, and the boys watched the match together. And I was disappointed personally. I missed that, but my job then was, right, we need to start getting planning for the weekend. And it was a case of then Tuesday evening to a man, they all turned up at training. They were shook, but they worked, and I said to them, look lads, we need to get a bit of a sweat on here, nothing heavy, but we just need to flush the system, get the toxins out. And we went and we trained on Wednesday, which we'd never done, and we done, maybe a half an hour of good work on Wednesday evening, and that just teed it up. And like I said there, we had I wasn't sure until we had the meeting Friday evening, and we announced the team, and a couple of guys spoke. And like I said, look, I've said it there in a few places. I rang Niall Cock and I said, "Geez, I think we're right. Like, I think the boys are really ready for this." And you could just sense it. Like they're a good group. They're good together. And even yesterday, like even when we said about going upstairs, we usually have a little chat before we go up to the dressing room. And they didn't go out on the pitch. They were there together, and they were just, I suppose, enjoying what was coming, really.
Yeah, I saw them all lined up outside the Centre of Excellence there during the match. Were you a little bit pissed off that the pitch wasn't cleared for you? I saw you running onto the field. I was tweeting about that, thinking it was bad form. I thought it was bad form it was badly organised, but also Meath and Clare should have known. You know what I mean? They were staying talking to supporters out in the field.
Yeah, that's it, and that's where, look, I suppose I'd be straight, and I didn't want to. You hate kind of. I don't like kind of arguing, but I had a little bit of a growl at some of the stewards. I said, "Come on, lads, will you get them off the pitch?" And some of them were standing over at a gate at the terrace and allowing people freely walk in and walk straight across where we were trying to warm up. And you're just conscious of players at that stage. They need their space and they need to get to do what they have to do. And that was odd. Now, in fairness to the lads, the stewards, once we let the little bark at them, they cleared the pitch, to be fair to them, and we were able to get on with it. And I suppose we found out afterwards, Tommy Fitz said, he said we're actually 2 minutes early onto the pitch. But it worked out. But look, that's important, because when you get out there, look, the players need to get their game face on, and the last thing you want is that kind of thing. And that's, look, no disrespect to anyone, you're there to do a job. Yeah, exactly. You're there to do a job. And some players like to sprint out in the field, and you could run into a child or anything. It's just not good enough, as far as I would be concerned. For a big match like that. Tipperary now, Eddie. So, this is a big enemy for you. So I presume you'll be imparting words of wisdom in that regard onto the Laois players. Yeah, look, it's as I said earlier on, I said the noisy neighbours, they're noisy neighbours for Laois as well. But look, there's it's a massive opportunity, and I think that's the one thing you say to the lads, is if you had to have told the lads maybe, last November when we met them for the first time that, we're going to play in Croke Park, we'll go back 7 days later to Moore Park and we'll take out, a top tier team, and then the following weekend we're going back to Croke Park to play Tipperary in the quarterfinal of the championship. I think that they probably would have all walked out the door and said, "This lad is do lally," but and we'd have never envisaged that, that scenario coming. But I felt from get go that they were good enough to win the McDonagh, no doubt about that. And even Sunday, look, facing into Dublin, and that was the one thing that behind the pump that was there all week from winning it. And I just, in the back when I said, "No, we went up in a league match and we should have beaten them in that league match in Parallel Park." And I just said, "Look," I said, "I think that, there's no doubt these boys are there for the take." And I said, "And it's different if you were facing a different animal, maybe." But and look, they were short some of their big names too, but that's not our problem. We just went with our game plan and focused on ourselves, and just, as I said to the boys, just the big thing is with this is just keep having belief in yourself and keep backing yourselves, and they did. Yeah, no, they definitely did. Come here, Eddie, congratulations and best of luck against Tipperary, and thanks for taking the call. No bother, Willie, thanks. Take care. So it has to be said, Cheddar, 122 to 23 points. This was no fluke. This was no smash and grab. This was a team who led from the start, led the whole way through the game. Even when Dublin got back level, they reeled off 3 points in a row, stood up and were counted. There was nothing jammy about this. There was no minnow getting a late goal. This was a dominant performance from start to finish, and the much better team on the day won.
I think that's true, and I don't think Dublin would question that either, Willie. Certainly right throughout the game. They were certainly the more hungry. They were certainly by far and away the more aggressive on the contested balls, and they played the most intelligent hurling. And I said here last week that I actually had better scoring forwards than Dublin had, and it was proved yesterday. Some of the long range shooting was good. Look, there was other serious issues as well. You know, I mean, Dublin's complacency was shocking. I was just amazed by it, really. You know, did they completely underestimate Laois yesterday? It just looked like that. And I don't want to just that's the excuse, but there was probably a couple of things sort of lent to itself to that. Like all of the talk was about Dublin and Tipperary. You know, all the media people were sort of talking about that. And, you know, so I heard some article and read some articles where wasn't even a mention of the preliminary quarterfinal. It wasn't even mentioned. And you know, sometimes that you know, teams get lazy. Everybody gets lazy, and it seeps into the subconscious, and you don't think of it. But there was a couple of other little things as well. I just know that Laois played Dublin's second team in a challenge game a number of weeks ago, and Dublin hockeyed them. Now, on the flip side of that, Laois played Cork's second team, and the reverse was the case, and played really, really well against them. And you know, I don't know the details of it, but you know, maybe Eddie and Niall and the lads maybe threw a bit of a curved ball to Dublin in that game. I don't know. Maybe they didn't play with a sweeper or whatever. I don't know. But there was a number of things sort of happened which lulled you know, Dublin definitely into the bear trap, and I'm just amazed that they fell so completely for it. For Dublin not to counter John Lennon as a sweeper yesterday I was just amazed by it. Even if they just simply, if they engaged him, even it would have made a difference.
See, Dublin quite like leaving Moran free, and he got the free roll because Madden marked Mark Kavanagh. So Dublin kind of liked that situation that Sean Moran gets the free roll.
But that's not the issue. Why would you allow the opposition team play their best player as a sweeper? John Lennon is a very intelligent hurler. You know, a lot of confidence about himself in terms of possession of the ball and that yesterday, and all of those aspects shone through yesterday. Yeah. And he's a real front foot. He played sweeper exactly the way you want to play it.
Oh, he was brilliant at it, yeah.
And he's really quick at coming through the lines and giving an assist to defenders and that. Why wouldn't you play one of your other forwards on him and leave somebody else free? That's the first thing. As a manager, that's the first thing you will do. Well, look, let's take this fella out of it anyway first, and let's see who they want to appoint then as the sweeper. And it was, you know, I was just amazed by a lot of things that Dublin didn't do in a situation like that. And I'm just going back to that complacency word again. You know, did they completely underestimate Laois? Both management and team completely underestimate. I even thought their warm-up was a little bit, it certainly wasn't to the intensity level you would think to go into a war.
I was actually a bit concerned about Laois's warm-up. I thought it was too long because the weather was so warm, and knowing the short turnaround and that they had points the week before, I was thinking, geez, Laois, relax there, do a bit of stretching. I thought they'd done too much while I was watching it.
But I say, Willie, look...
what do I know?
No, it's not that. No, you do know. What I'm going to say, you do know very well. You're just being consistent in these things. Don't change. Go with routine. Don't change things around. And I would imagine that the warm-up wasn't hugely different than it was the previous week and that. You know, don't confuse players a minute before a big game like that. And I'd say even just before the throw-in is often good time to give the players a minute or two at that stage to gather their thoughts and that, and not go flat to the mat. I've seen some warm-ups, and look, it depends on the team you have. Some things trigger different teams and that, but I just thought the dropping of the ball and that by Dublin was nearly indicative of the way they started. You know, it certainly wasn't at the championship fervour and pace. And I just thought there was, you know, I'm just talking generally here now, there's one other aspect. You know, the Laois dogs of war fought like dogs of war. You know, Dublin didn't match that. Charlie and Willie Dunphy thundered into everything, hit everything in sight, won everything in sight, got tumbled up and down themselves a couple of times. And it wasn't that ferocity wasn't matched by Dublin. And I know, and we all know that Dublin can match that. They matched it against Galway, but it just didn't bring that hunger and desire to the game, I thought. Now look, Wooly, it may very well be that they were out muscled. I don't like the word out muscled, but they were out fought.
I'll take your point, fair enough, for the first half, Cheddar. Now, Dublin looked like they were at 6s and 7s, but they regrouped at half time and they knew they were in a battle in the second half, and Laois beat them in that battle as well. You know, like, I mean, okay, Dublin might have won the second half by 3 points or whatever it was. Yeah. But that was a game Dublin knew after regrouping, and Dublin came out with a different attitude. So, like, I mean, I'll take it. I do think that they sleptwalked into it, and before they knew it, they were 5 down and they were in a war, and they hadn't maybe thought they were going to be in it, and a huge crowd. But you'd give Laois huge credit for the second half, for even answering when they got back level.
I agree. The thing that pleased me most about Laois yesterday was the self-belief when Dublin came level. And even before that, Willie, Dublin crept up on them a number of times, and Laois go back down and they'd knock it over the bar again and keep the scoreboard ticking. And obviously Dublin had a huge amount of wides as well. Now Laois,
16-12 in the end.
Yeah,
so not much in that.
No, there's not much in that. It wasn't the change of the game.
No.
Nonetheless, some of the Dublin ones were hard to credit. Really, at that level is all I'll say. And I go back to that point again of what I made, and I was saying it to Dotsy yesterday as well, that Dublin need one or two of those forwards. I just keep using the example of the John McGrath example or the Pat Horgan. I know they don't grow on trees. They come once in a lifetime. Players that in very, very short situations, and particularly on the back foot when you're under pressure, and that you can get the shot away, that'll take the score. And some of the shots yesterday that Dublin took were under pressure, and when they were on the back foot, that those scores weren't coming. So I do agree, Willie, on that. I think Dublin had a chance at half-time to reorganise themselves. And I don't think they've done a huge amount to reorganise themselves. But even if
their attitude, though, they organised that.
They certainly did that.
Tactically, they didn't do much.
Yeah, I thought that, and certainly they did come out with certainly they were more motivated in the second half. I do agree with you on that, and with great credit to Laois for really sticking with it, and not just peaking for 30 minutes, and playing consistently right throughout the 70 minutes, and even coming down to the end, getting some great scores. I mean, Willie Dunphy got some scores coming down the wire yesterday that it would grace any pitch. Any day, and All Ireland final day they would grace it. There were some fantastic scores and some good layoffs and pop pints and that. So huge credit to the lads for, even when the pressure came on, that they didn't blink, nor did they change their style. They still worked the ball out of the defence cleverly, used the ball intelligently, laid off the ball, had runners coming off the shoulder and popped the pints. And huge credit, and huge credit to the management as well. Their matchups really worked yesterday. And
Lines on Crummy worked lovely.
Yes, it did, yes. And I think the biggest matchup yesterday was Jack Kelly and Danny Sutcliffe.
And then when Sutcliffe got on top of Kelly in the second half with his legs, they changed it very quickly. I was mentioning that to Eddie. That was a good move too, not just putting him on him, but also taking him off him when he needed to be.
No, I agree with that. But I think what was more important happened before that, Willie. Jack Kelly wasn't content just to mark Danny Sutcliffe.
Yeah.
Jack Kelly had more offences, I'd say, than Danny Sutcliffe had yesterday.
And they hit him with a load of puck-outs too, didn't they?
Yeah, well, look, Dublin do that. So there was a lot to admire about Laois yesterday, and in terms of the way they faced it. And I'll go back to, I suppose, look, I'll say also, and I've said this, that, technical hurlers, really, really good technical hurlers. Aaron Dunphy is as sweet a hurler as you will find anywhere. So is Roddy, so is Mark Kavanagh. These are technically gifted players. And technically gifted players can find their own time and find their own space. And they don't need that huge amount of space to get the shot away and to get a score away. So, look, Laois have a lot of things in their locker when you have that quality of forward. But I want to turn to the other side, Willie, because I said it here last week that Enda Rowland must surely be considered for an All-Star at this stage, at the very least a nomination. And he proved it yesterday. And it was three aspects. The three aspects that you expect a goalkeeper to be good at. He needs to save the ball, and he'd done it yesterday. And a goal at that stage, well, I'd say even the second time, you might recover from the first goal, but you wouldn't have recovered from Danny Sutcliffe's shot. And it was a reaction save, and it was really, really important. The second aspect of his, obviously, is his free-taking ability. I mean, he scored 2 points yesterday, and, we laud Owen Murphy about that when he does it. And this guy can do that, and he's been doing it for a number of years, for a number of teams. And, I think the biggest aspect about yesterday, about Enda, was his puck-outs. There weren't, as we'd call them in hurling, droppers or hangers, or different counties have different names for these things, which favours catchers. There were low trajectory puck-outs, which favours a half forward coming onto the ball either for the catch or to tap down to himself. So it sort of took the Chris Crummy strength away from him. Whereas there's a hanger there, Chris will outfield anybody with that type of ball. So will Liam Ryan, and so will the Wexford halfbacks and that type of stuff.
Yeah. There were bullets
coming at hand height that you can take them at height, or you can actually tap them to, like we spoke about Bonner last week. He said it tapped the ball to different size for runners to come onto the ball. So I think that was also really important, because I know we might have coughed up maybe 1 or 2 puck-outs, but on average, I thought they were really, really important to us retaining the ball and just having the confidence in our system and all of those things.
Yeah, no, they definitely were. I thought, the use of the ball was brilliant, like I mentioned to Eddie, and the hand passes, and even, the hand passes in hurling now, because, the middle third is so congested that often you're bottled up and you have to actually hand pass it up over your head and bat it down to someone free, and there was always someone free, and Lennon was brilliant at that he lent a hand, so they got so much right. I think a lot of the ball in the first half half went over towards Ross King's corner at the terrace side. And I thought this is just one thing I think they could potentially improve on is Ross was running out in straight lines and Paddy Smith was right up his backside and he was breaking out. Like, if that ball's coming diagonal to his corner, he should get out of that corner, and Cha or whoever is in there should be coming out to collect that. Do you know what I mean? So running out in straight lines is a little bit old fashioned, and I thought Ross, to his detriment, was doing it a little bit too often on a defender like Paddy Smith. Like, he's too tight for that kind of stuff.
No, I agree with you. Certainly there was a good bit of ball went over there. Some of it I think was just going too strong through the lines. That type of ball needs to be maybe 10 metres out in front of you on the grass, that you will run onto it. I'm going back to the forward needs to be able to shield a man away from the ball. In other words, the cornerback really has to beat you out to the ball to actually get to it. And look, you don't need to be the fastest player. You can shield a man from breaking and he's going to foul you out for the ball. And I just felt that the ball going in may not have been as precise and to the right place, but that's easy.
There was an element of that too, yeah.
It's a little bit easy to say up in the stand. But the other side of that is, Roddy has come back into the Laois panel, maybe a number of months ago, may not have had the pre-season done and the sort of foundation that's needed to be able to be. Paddy Smith is a fantastic, quick and a very, very good man marker, one of the best Dublin players. So you need to think a little bit more how you're actually going to beat him. And the last point I'll make in that is when Roddy went out to the half-hour line, he was instrumental in creating and scoring a couple of scores there.
That was a good move. See, they got all the switches right, Cheddar, didn't they? Yeah. Because I thought Ross was struggling in that corner, and it was an element of the bad ball, but also his runs. But then the half-forward line, he got on a nice little bit of ball, set up a score, scored an inspirational one. And that was the right move at that time. And I think they moved Aaron Dunphy across to the side then, that all the ball was going down to get him into the game as well.
Yeah, look, it was nearly one of these games, Willie, when all of the things you try, come right for you and come off for you. I mean, I thought Charlie was given a physical performance around the middle third, and they moved Willie out to Willie Dunphy out there and moved Charlie inside. And look, maybe the lads were just resting players for the time. I don't know. I don't know the inside on that. If it was a great idea. But there's not too many people in Laois would have put Willie out in the middle of the field simply because of his injury history, maybe more than anything else. And the other side of that is his danger in and around the square. And club hurling in Laois, Willie Dunphy is dynamite anywhere within 30 metres of the goal. But the move really worked. And I just thought that maybe 10 minutes from the end, maybe bringing Charlie back out there to consolidate the middle third and bring that physical element to it, might have even given us more purchase as such. But look, all of the moves worked, and you've got to give credit to even the matchups and the moves during the game. All of them worked, and that's great kudos to management here.
Yeah, and Willie Dunphy has I love a forward being converted to midfield. Like they did it with Ross King a couple of years ago, different management. I think it was Eamon Kelly. Damien Hayes is the big one that kind of started it all off, I think. But Willie kind of staying out of the play and being there for a hand pass back to score. Like there is a lot of sense to having an accurate fella out around there, to stay out of the rucks, don't be getting into that, and be there to stick it over the bar.
I think, Willie, it depends on your game plan. Your chief scorers need to be close to the goal. There's a huge amount of statistics driven by statistical people in the GAA that says something like 90% or something like that of all scores happen within that maybe 30, 40 metres in front of the goals. And that's with all game plans over the last couple of years. So it would make sense to have your chief score getters close to goal to make sure that you execute all of those. On the flip side of that, if you were working the ball around the middle and shooting from distance, well then obviously that's not going to work. Your score getters then, you're not going to be putting ball into them. So it would depend on your team, and it would depend on the way you're playing to put your chief score getters or your chief shooters in the right places, getting the right type of ball to get the scores. And Roddy and Willie Dunphy in club hurling and county hurling, in that semicircle in front of the goals are simply lethal. And I'll speak up Roddy here, and I hope Nicky English doesn't mind me mentioning his name here, but a number of years ago I would have been in regular contact with Nicky. Nicky was manager of UCD at the time, and he rated Roddy King as one of the finest corner forwards and definitely the coming corner forward in hurling. And Nicky doesn't mince his words about players. He speaks honestly about players, and he definitely just doesn't talk up players for the sake of it. So Roddy and Willie and these type of players, they have that ability. It happened yesterday that there was nearly a confluence of things yesterday. All things came right on the day, and a performance like that. I suppose just all of us would just love to see that consistency throughout games. But they have that ability. And, as I said to you, I've used Nicky's name as an example here because he certainly knows he's hurling. People recognise that some of these players have, serious potential to play to this level. It's just getting all of the culture and all of those things right to make the best use of all of our resources here on the day. And I think that happened yesterday.
Yeah, I think it did. And like Brennan Cummins has said something similar about the Laois players who would have had first-hand experience with them as well. Like,
Brendan was goal team coach with ourselves for a number of years, yes.
Yeah, so like Matty Kenny said after the game, he said that was an unacceptable performance. He actually, the face on Matty Kenny in the interview in the Sun of Graham, he looked like he was after sucking on a lemon, so he was absolutely livid, shell-shocked, all those things. He said it was an unacceptable performance from our group, and we know that the problem is it's too fucking late now. So, that's the problem, Dublin didn't have that wake-up call because they'd performed so well in the Leinster part of it. Even going down against Kilkenny, you could still say they played well. It's just Kilkenny played better, So Dublin got taught their lesson at a time when they're out. So, that's it.
I can understand Matty yesterday, and I have huge sympathy for Matty. I mean, look, we've all been there, Willie. Matty pours his heart and soul. He's an incredibly passionate man about any team and caring man about any team. I don't know Matty well, but that's what I'm seeing from the outside. And I really feel for him after yesterday. And look, I don't think he was saying that the players didn't perform. I think he was saying all of us just didn't perform in the day, and unfortunately now the game is over and we can't change that. I think that's what he was saying. Sometimes in the heat of the moment after a match like that, particularly a performance like that, your thoughts are a little bit all over the place.
I don't think he was blaming players. I do think he included everyone in
absolutely.
that.
I certainly wouldn't judge Matty. I judge no person. Where everybody's a human being here after the matches, and they're highly charged, highly emotional games, and it was a huge blow to Dublin here. Look, I suppose I probably would question a couple of. I think did Dublin have a launch of their jersey or something like that last week and all of that? It's amazing. I suppose little things like that can lead to what sort of happened yesterday, complacency and all of those things. It's just. I suppose it just illustrates all of the minutiae that you need to manage. Absolutely everything, phone call, the whole works that you need to manage to make sure that yesterday doesn't happen. And even you can still do all of that and it can still happen. So I have huge sympathy for Matty yesterday. Poured his heart and soul into a Dublin project and has done the same in Coola for a number of years. And then just, it's very sickening to come out of that from a player and management perspective and know that you haven't given it your best shot. If you have given it your best shot, done everything you can, and you get turned over, well, you say, look, we need to go back and look at that and fix some things, come back next year. But if you haven't given your shot, it's a real dagger in the heart.
It definitely is. Finish up, Ryan Mullaney said after the game yesterday, he says it'll make people want to hurl for Laois. The amount of young lads that were out there, hopefully they will look up now and want to hurl for Laois. People will be proud to play for Laois. They'll want to do it and think that we're going places. And that's a fair point. So the knock-on of this is the inspiring the young children who were all at the game, but also the faces, the 4 or 5 players who didn't want to commit this year who would have something to offer. I think there was 16 in total, but I think that number might be little bit exaggerated, Cheddar, would it? There's a few Camrus lads would be good enough to play. There might be 1 or 2 more and maybe Cahir could come back, if fingers crossed if he was right. Nothing wrong with what he did. He'd given the hurlers a good few years and was going with the footballers. So if you got maybe those 3 or 4 back next year, would strengthen the thing up again.
I know. I'd agree that there's not 16. If there is, we would have been consistently performing over the last 30 or 40 years. Look, there is certainly some players, Joe Campion, Kieran Collier Lee Bergen, Sean Downey. Look, they have been on or off the panel the last couple of years. And look, some of these are it's not that they don't want to engage. Some of it may very well be personal things and that that they have in their lives, and that certainly those 4 players and Cahir, I'd be delighted to see Cahir first of all getting over his injury fully and committing to hurling again next year. And like those 5 players would actually have started yesterday.
Would they all start?
Without a doubt. But that's not the point, Wooly. The point is those 5 players cannot just walk into a Laois dressing room now and expect that jersey back. You've got to go in there now and earn it. And there needs to be a little bit of bringing that together and pulling that together. There would be certainly a welcome in it because that's the issue with the Laois and Carlos and Westmeath. And look, I'll use Westmeath. Westmeath were missing Niall O'Brien and Owen Price and Niall Mitchell this year, and it was a huge blow to them, and a huge blow to them yesterday. I know Owen played yesterday, but these counties, because of their low numbers of quality players to be able to play at this level, it really hurts them if you're missing a few players. So to Laois, that would be a major boost to the team, but only if everybody's on the one wavelength. And the first people you need to consider is the people who poured their heart and soul into a win yesterday. You need to be able to mend all of those things, and you just cannot say, "I will go out and get the lads back and we'll improve the extra 5%. It's not going to work like that, but it would be hugely beneficial if that could happen, and all of the proper connecting and all the wiring up and hard wiring needed in a team like that was done. Then it would be beneficial, but only under those type of conditions.
Brilliant stuff, Cheddar. We'll be back with Paddy Power performance of the weekend. So Paddy Power performance of the weekend. Before we get into our nominations, I've narrowed it down to 5. It wasn't easy, Cheddar, to narrow it down to 5, because you could have picked all 15 and the 3 lads that came on as well. 3 or 4, how many came on. First, you wanted to thank a few big names who turned up to your charity game on Saturday night. A good crowd showed up to it too.
It was great, yeah. It was a fantastic return from, look, I'll speak about Laois players first because of the day that's in it. Ex-Laois players who turned up. And a fantastic turnout from, the other counties. I mean, Dan was up from Dungarvan, Brendan Bugler was up from Ennis, Ollie was up from Limerick, and I'm just using the ones that are from far away. And I need to give a mention to Michael Carton and to Dotsy, who were beaten yesterday. They were down on Saturday night as well, and a lot of other players as well. And everybody was very, very thankful to them, and it just showed really the generosity of the GAA community. And it's not just simply because it was a charity event. It just shows the decency and generosity of people in situations like this. And I'd just like to say thanks very much to everybody who turned up.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. First nomination for Paddy Power performance of the weekend is Willie Dunphy, and we touched on him already, Cheddar. It was not just the 4 points from play. Like you said, he hit everything that moved. He's a hardy hooer. He took an awful hit under the terrace. It looked like his collarbone was gone. We were speculating if he was able to continue. Next minute, he's back lined up in midfield in the second half, says this lad must be Superman. He set up the goal by chasing down a completely lost cause that Sean Moran didn't have the interest in chasing down, kept it from going in. And like you said, rounded him, and then his lethal in those situations, went for goal from a tight angle, and it came out to his brother then, Aaron, who stuck it away. Like, so all in all, like a game, just fairy tale stuff really from him.
Yeah, no, a fantastic player. Look, as I said earlier on, I just wanted to put in context of what Willie Dunphy plays with. He will always have that injury, and please God, it won't hurt him for the rest of his life, but he is one tough player, and collarbone broken, he probably would have played on, to be honest with you. I wouldn't even have felt it. It's that, I suppose, that separated Laois a little bit from Dublin yesterday, and there was a little bit of the sort of the cracks from maybe 10-15 years ago, that when you physically get in among Dublin, that they don't match that. I'm not saying, I'm not talking about no time for dirty hurling or any of that sort of stuff. It's just that physical aggression on the contested ball, that when you get in among them, sometimes they don't match it. And I think they were seriously complacent yesterday, and certainly didn't match Willie Dunphy on the contested ball, or Charlie on the contested ball. And at the end of the day, they're the bonners of, that's what the bonners bring to Tipperary. We've spoken about this a number of times in terms of these type of players and their value to the team. They set the tone for the team, and they certainly set the tone about how we were going to win yesterday.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Willie Dunphy, certainly a contender for it, yes.
Yeah, Cha Dwyer, we've mentioned some of these already. Cha set the tone early anyways with that, an inspirational point, threw it up off the hurl. And like you said, he'd go through a brick wall, and he would. That's just the way he is. He's as tough as nails, isn't he? And he's really, really physical player.
You wouldn't want to hide. He's a very, very good hurler as well. Charlie Dwyer, I spoke about him last week. Don't want to over egg Charlie here, but Charlie Dwyer dragged Castlecomer Community School to a Leinster A championship in schools, and has been doing this for Laois for a number of years. Has done the very, very same thing with Carlow IT. Dragged them to 2 Fitzgibbon Cup finals, if my memory serves. Definitely to 1, but definitely I think actually to 2. So he's that type of player, and look, his address is Iron Mills, and that tells you enough about the man.
It definitely does. Ryan Mullaney, I thought, was outstanding. Not only keeping Keeney quiet, Keeney had 1 or 2 wides, but Keeney's really top level player, but also some really strong runs. He's a powerful man when he gets going, isn't he?
Yes. that was really important because if you look at the last number of games, there was a lot of emotion around Conal Keaney and his performance and his importance to Dublin.
Yeah.
Ryan did break him yesterday. There was no doubt about that. Now, in fairness, Conal missed a couple of points as well that if you put over the bar, you might have had a different view of this today. But particularly earlier on, then they isolated Conal almost on the sideline. I have seen him do that below in Wexford Park against Wexford. I've seen it. Dublin do this a number of times. Isolate him under the dropping ball, under the puck out, knock at the dropper out on top of him, and he makes the run crosswise across your body, takes possession, and of course he's bearing down on goal, and then you're in a little bit of trouble that way. And Ryan actually he definitely caught one clean ball right over his head and powered up the sideline. Ryan has always been able to do that from underage up, Wooly. I just think that his fitness levels weren't where they should have been in the last year or two. They certainly are now, and it just shows what he can do, and it just shows, I suppose, the importance of fitness to today's game, that, you could have a lot of good skills yourself, but if you don't have that fitness level, you're just not going to survive in the game. And he certainly got himself in great shape this year, and that was early on. It wasn't just recently, it was earlier on. Got himself in great shape, not dissimilar to Bubbles, to be honest with you. You just knew by looking at his body composition that he was in a complete different shape than he was the last couple of years. And he's a big man, 6'2" or 3 or 4 maybe, and he'll hurl to that size as well. And you sort of need that air game. And look, that broke one of Dublin's key planks over the last couple of games. Conal being dominant, particularly in the air and the half-forward line, and then distributing the ball around the place. It certainly hurt Dublin.
Have you noticed a difference in all of their physical conditioning? Do you notice that they're maybe improved a bit on the strength and conditioning, and that they look physically bigger or stronger?
I wouldn't say that, Wooly. They're definitely fitter. There's no doubt about that. But a lot of that, Wooly, sometimes you misjudge that and you think a team is fitter. But a lot of that is the coaching, more to do maybe than strength and conditioning. Now, I do think they are fitter than they were last year or the year before. But a lot of that, if you're playing possession game and you have supporters coming off the shoulder, they've already made their run maybe 5 seconds before their opposition, and you have a number of Laois runners then coming off the shoulder to take the ball, and the team simply looks fit, and they're pinging the ball to hand. So once a Laois player comes off the half back line, the receivers in the half forward line have already made a small run to get into the open space or to get into the channel to receive it. Now they're in open territory and they're able to make that burst of run with the ball in possession, and you just know by looking, or you think by looking at it, God, this team is flying. When that has more to do with the system of play
and using the ball better.
Using the ball better. And I go back, I want to pay a lot of compliments to Niall. Niall's been hugely influential in that, and it's probably has a more major role to play than anybody in the way that Laois is playing at the minute. Yeah.
John Lennon thought he was outstanding. A lot of Sean Murphy, Kevin Foley, these fellas get a lot of credit for being brilliant sweepers. But for a man who wouldn't play that role all that often, at least with Laois anyways, I'm not too sure. But geez, he was a very clever player. He was over where the danger was. He doubled up when he needed to. He intercepted when needed to. And he played the role like a man that's been playing it a long, long time. He was always where the danger was.
Yes, I know John a long time. I have coached him even at under 14 level at different times in his career, and certainly at senior level.
What age is he?
I'd say John's maybe 21 or 22, maybe 23 now, maybe at this stage. A lot of that team are probably in the 23-year age bracket now. First of all, he's a very, very intelligent man, and you sort of need that, playing that role, because you kind of just get the ball off of somebody and hump it up the field. You've got to understand exactly what you're going to do with the ball. Very composed, great confidence in himself as a person. So you need all of those things in that role. I'm not surprised. Originally, I would have seen John Lennon, when he was younger, as being that grafting 11 that you might be looking for in a team, if that's the way you wanted to play. And I'm sort of thinking about the role that John Parr used to play with Kenny a number of years ago. He's a great guy, very, very competitive guy again to win ball, particularly primary ball off the floor and that, and to break through the tackle or break into the open space and then find people with an offload. He's just really, really good at that. When you think of it, that's not dissimilar to what you're looking for in a sweeper.
Yeah.
But you're right, the team hasn't played a sweeper for a little while, and that's one of the other things I just wanted to say, Wooly, about Dublin. I don't want to be critical of a Dublin management team, because Dublin have a fantastic management team at the minute, and I know some of them, and I know what they will bring to the table here. But they must have known that Dublin were going to, or at least were going to try something different. And look, what were you going to try against in an underdog situation? You'll play some defensive screen. It mightn't be necessarily an out-and-out sweeper, but you would plan for it. And, I didn't think that Dublin tried anything to reduce the effectiveness of John Lennon yesterday, because he was absolutely crucial to the team win yesterday. Not necessarily himself, but that role was crucial in the way he carried it out.
Yeah, exactly. Ender Rowland, we've obviously mentioned him. 2 monster frees, brilliant save from Danny Sutcliffe, which is routine for him at this stage. I was at the Antrim game and he made 2 equally spectacular saves in the first half, and another brilliant save where he came out and smothered Dylan, who loves to score a goal and it was bearing down on goals. He tried to throw it up and bat it in. It looked like there was a goal on. You've covered him fairly well with his puck outs that don't hang, and he's just outstanding. I think he's a shoe in for a nomination for an All-Star at this stage, at least. Anyways, depending on what happens against Tipperary, he could be in with a right shout.
And that's really important. I rate the goalkeeper in hurling your most important player. First of all, he's most positions in his hand, so he can influence a game more than any other player. Generally speaking, he has. But the other side of that, he's also the player that can contribute most to your confidence in your team. Ender Rowland and all of the great keepers will save the balls that they should save. They may not be able to save. You won't see them diving around the goals and that type of stuff, making stupendous saves and then letting one through their legs or something like that. He will save. You will not beat Ender Rowland, I'd say, anywhere outside 30 metres. You just won't beat him. And that's what you expect. That's his job. You're not expecting him to do anything different than your full back or your centre back rank. That's his job. He should be able to do it. But he does that, and he's a great steadying influence and a very good talker to the team in front of him. And I just rate goalkeepers so important to the team, both the confidence and obviously to doing his own job as well.
Yeah, listen, there's loads more performances, but we can't name everyone. Mark Kavanagh was actually well shackled by Madden. Didn't get the free role that they used to. Dublin did their homework on him, and they did their homework on Paddy Purcell as well. They didn't let him get on many of his famous runs. He got on 1 or 2, but they were fairly tracking him. They definitely had their homework done on a few of Laois's danger men. Aaron Dunphy obviously scored 1-2, outstanding as well. Jack Kelly was brilliant right throughout the game. Look, you could name the whole team. Thought Matthew Whelan actually didn't have one of his stronger games, which is he's usually a lot steadier than that. Lee Clear was one that I meant to mention. He caught a brilliant ball in the first half, and I think did that ball end up in the goal where Willie Dunphy chased the lost cause? It could have, but he won a free then, like Eddie Brennan mentioned, in the second half, which Ender Rowland stuck over. He got a short puck out and took on his man and got pulled down and got the free, which is a really important time as well. So, geez, you could name the whole team, like I said, Cheddar, but I think we're going to give it to Willie Dunphy for the 4 points from play, for everything that we said. He works for a friend of mine, Danny Hanlon, who fitted a kitchen in my house. So no doubt Willie had a part in that as well.
Well, Willie, I'm going to disagree with you on this one now, and I'm sorry about this. First of all, you just touch on another point, Willie. Why Dublin didn't go to Kitchen at some stage and put Colm in there when things weren't working otherwise for him, I don't know. But look, that's discussion for the next day.
Hayes finished the first half really strongly.
Hayes is a very good hurler, and I've seen him hurl. He hurled actually corner forward against Laois in a Moore Park in a league game a number of years ago. I rate him very, very highly, and he's a tall player. Working off of that breaking ball and with him working off that breaking ball coming off of Conal Keeney might have caused us some problems. I was just surprised that there was a number of things there that Dublin didn't work on. I didn't see a plan B, in other words, even if that's route 1 to the Kitchen, because of the players to play it. But anyway, look, that's a discussion for another day. I'm not going to name any man in the match, Wooly, because I don't think it's right. I'm just going to name a Laois team, a Laois management team, and Laois supporters yesterday were all man in the match, and we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, well, listen, I'll agree with that. Maybe Paddy
I'll say one other point, Wooly. Laois have just won a match. And obviously we're very, very, very proud about that. But let's not get carried away. We want this to be different. We want it to be consistent. We want to keep our feet on the ground, and we want to pursue all of the things that's going to make us consistent. We're delighted with our players yesterday, but we want to change things.
Exactly. Right, well, I'll get on to Paddy Power. See, we'll send a pair of lucky pants to Laois team, substitutes, management, and everyone has showed up to a Moore Park yesterday, including you and me, Cheddar. Everyone in the audience. That's the kind of mood we're all in after this win. Cheddar, thanks very much for coming up on your holidays. A good few people asked me to get you up today, so thanks very much for doing that for us.
Pleasure.
If you can't do it after a win like that, then we'll never do it. So that's it. Tipperary next for Laois. I understand that Cork beat Westmeath, but we don't care about that. This is all about Laois's win. We'll talk about Cork on Thursday in the lead up to a huge game against Kilkenny. But like I said, it's been all about Laois. It's fantastic yesterday, and they're a credit to the county, and congratulations to them, and best of luck against Tipperary. We'll talk about that as well on Thursday's show. We'll talk to you then. Good luck.